This is A Smaller Life, a podcast about making more conscious and more ethical choices within our crafts. Hosted by me, Saskia de Feiter. I'm a small business owner who wants to grow by going smaller. Together with local makers, I make tools, yarns, and accessories for knitters that want to buy less, buy better, make more, and make it last, keeping away the overwhelm and all the ridiculousness of over-consuming within our crafts. In the podcast, I endeavor to answer the question we ask ourselves before we start a project. What do we buy? Where do we buy? Who do we buy from? Or don't we buy at all, but use what we already have? Because when you think about what you do, you take more time and end up with less of everything. As a result, you'll get a smaller life. 2 weeks ago, I asked a question on my Instagram account. The question was, what is, in your personal opinion, a fair hourly wage for a professional crafter? And 85% says it was more like 50 euros, but still a whopping 15% answered around 10 euros, I was a little amazed by that answer and proceeded to ask some more questions. I got a lot of responses from hobby knitters and professional knitters, and also other professionals. One of them is here with us now to talk to us about this topic. Her name is Jonna van het Hof. And Jonna, why don't you start by telling us what you do for a living and what your hobbies are?
Hi, I'm Jonna. I work as a legal and business advisor for a union of professional artists, for visual artists. Well, it's a bit related to knitting, I think. I'm a knitter. I do also sew, crochet, weave. I love making textile.
Yeah.
So that's both of these things triggered me to answer and to talk to Saskia today.
Yeah, so you had an amazingly specific answer to the topic, and I was completely like, oh, she needs to go and talk to the listeners and share her knowledge with us. So let's first make this distinction between you work for a union of professional visual artists. What kind of artists are we talking about specifically here?
Well, it's a large variety. I think that the main disciplines are painters, sculptors. There will be some graphic designers, photographers, also some textile artists. I do believe we have a weaver. Well, it's one of the, I think, 2 or 3 big unions for visual artists in the Netherlands. It's the oldest union. They started in 1945 after the Second World War from the artist resistance. And it's quite, in true history, it's quite, I say, activist organization. Mm. And nowadays it's not so much. We don't go to the streets anymore and shout. But
right now we kind of are.
Yeah, in a way.
Speaking of these knitters.
So, well, I don't think we have any knitters among the artists, but I think the idea of setting your hourly wage or how to talk about your income, I think it's the same for professional artists as for knitters and other people in the creative industry.
Yeah. So that is the creative industry is like the common denominator. So, excuse me. There's a difference between a professional artist and a hobbyist and somebody that wants to make some money on the side, right?
Yes, there is. I think, well, there's different things to approach this. I think you can see it in quality of the work, which is always a very difficult thing because it's really close related to taste. But you can also see it in how people relate to taxes. And if they have a VAT number and these kind of things. And for us, we say, well, when you're a professional artist, you have to think about the tax things. Depending on your income, you have to have a VAT number or maybe not, but at least you have to think about it, to know it exists and to know if you need it or not.
Yeah.
And well, it's professional to pay your taxes. So.
Yeah, so in order to be a professional, you have to act like a professional.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Would you distinguish between, and here we go, this is a whole different thing. Would you distinguish between an artist and a crafter? Could you say something about that?
Ooh, that's a dangerous topic.
Yeah, it is a dangerous topic, I know, because let's just make it a little bit more specific. If you are a crafter and you want to start making your actual living, should you get the same hourly price, the same kind of situation as an artist that has gone to art school?
Well, for my work, we don't distinguish in people who went to art school or who don't and are what we call in Dutch autodidact. I don't know what
you don't, or you do?
No, we don't. Some of the best artists haven't been to art school and are self-educated.
It's really great for me to hear that in order to apply to be in the union, you don't have to be a literally schooled artist.
Because I think that's possible to educate yourself through courses from other artists and to have a different way of learning. For some artists, it's worked that way. I mean, I know a lot of artists who didn't finish art school because they felt claustrophobic in the direction the academy was pushing them. They wanted to be more free. So I don't think a distinction is there. What we call a professional artist is someone who makes, we call it in Dutch, autonoom werk. Autonomous work, yeah. I think that's, yeah.
I think the way you go into production versus original design, there's definitely a difference there. Like you're either a skilled machine making something that's already there from a pattern that's already there, which is another thing we should go into later, and designing your own patterns and making your own original designs and items. It's a totally different thing. There's probably a distinction in the way you get paid in which of these two things you do. And when I talk about production of, let's say, sweater, you cannot just start knitting patterns that are already there and then sell them. There's a whole thing with copyrights, but that's perhaps for another time. Actually, where we're trying to go with this interview is to give you some practical, but also like clear ideas on how you can start to take yourself seriously as a maker and how you can tell yourself that you are good enough and worthy enough of good payment, basically.
Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to do here.
Yeah.
Who applies to be in the union? What kind of people do that?
Yes, well, people who are, there's people who went through art school, but there's also people who later in life decided to be done with working in a corporate company or something, and they wanted to do something more professional with your creativity. There's pretty good artists in there. As an employee, I'm not allowed to say something about quality, but I've seen stuff and I think it's pretty good. So there's this whole different people. We say everyone who sees themselves as a professional artist can become a member. You have to show that you are. I mean, you have to convince us that you are. But the main idea is that when you think it, you have the right mindset, and then you can become it. Yeah. And the next step is if you just want to create or you want to make money with it, and that's also a different thing. I mean, some people are just content with creating and showing it to people, and that's okay.
Talking to yourself, saying, I am an artist, makes such a big difference.
Yeah.
Like taking yourself and your work seriously will make a world of a difference. So that's probably the first thing you should work on your confidence. But then let's say we are this person and confidence is sky high, but now we need to figure out what we're worth. How do we go about it?
Yes. Well, that's always the difficult part, because I think here the market for art and the market for knitted related items is difficult.
Yes.
And it's a luxury product. Not all people are willing to pay for that. This doesn't mean that it can cost what it costs, because, well, there are people who are willing to pay for it, who value it. So first thing is, don't be afraid to ask. Don't set your prices too low, because it's really difficult. When you set your prices low, you target for a different market than when you set your prices higher, and it's difficult to change markets in between. So, well, what every business owner or a self-employed person should do is make a business plan and see who. This is nobody wants to do this, I know. And with a business plan comes the scary part, market research. This is part knowing what you want to make, knowing what is good about your product, knowing what it is that you sell and what is the value of that in also other ways than money-wise. So I think that's the start. Then normally part of the business plan is an operating budget. And because, well, maybe I should go back a step. We distinguish three ways of setting a price. And first one is comparison what's already there in the market. If you want to sell sweaters that are being knitted, I think the first step is to go to Etsy and to see what sweaters are costing there. Well, some prices will shock you, as in how low they are, and some are as in how high they are. And I think it depends also on where the people are coming from. Hourly wages in Eastern Europe are lower than they are in the Netherlands. So people can, I have no idea about the economy there, but I think people need less money to live, because rent is lower, food is hopefully lower in cost. I have no idea. I don't know the economy about these countries, but this is what you see when you go on Etsy. The prices for knitted sweaters from, for example, Eastern Europe are cheaper than sweaters who are knitted in, let's say, Western Europe.
Hello, friends. I just want to say something to you quickly. So if you're liking the podcast, if you're liking what I'm talking about, consider joining the mailing list. I have bi-weekly updates on the podcast and or business insights and tips. The occasional exercise to get you ahead. If you want to actually talk to other business owners about the things that I talk about here on the podcast, why not become a Jawohl community member for as little as €8.50 a month? That's like buying me coffee and a croissant. But don't do it for me though. Do it for yourself, because I promise that you will get something out of it, either the emails and or the community. So you can either go to the show notes or sign up through jawohl.myflowdesk.com/pattern-shift. I hope you'll join us. Yeah. So you start by comparison. Mm-hmm. You start looking around and see what the prices are everywhere. And then that was the first way of setting a price.
Yes. Then I think this is a good way to know the market. But I think it's also a way to set your prices too low. So I wouldn't advise taking this mainly. Yeah. I would say look around, because I'm sorry, but I can't knit a sweater for €200. It's not sustainable. No. It's, I don't know, maybe half of it is the material cost. Then the hours of knitting alone is mind-blowing. Yeah. So you cannot make a living out of that. That's a hobbyist price.
Sweater is a hobbyist price. I think people are falling off their chairs right now.
Yeah, I mean, can you make it for that money?
No, I can't. I know that. This is why, no, you can't.
This is why I started knitting. to make the sweaters I want to wear because I wasn't able to afford it.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes. And then in Rotterdam, we have a street called Witte de Witstraat, and they have like some design shops. And I'm not even going into the fact that I would never be able to fit any of the clothes. But I went in there to look at the accessories because even big girls can have really nice accessories. And so I got in there and I bought a bag that I still own. I paid a good price for it, like a good price in the sense of it cost what it needed to cost, like not a good price in it was cheap. This is the vocabulary again. We need to change that vocabulary. Next to the shelf where my bag, I still own it and I love it dearly. Next to that shelf, there were hand knit sweaters. And the price of those sweaters was almost 900 euros.
Yeah.
And then on the way home, I started to calculate and I thought, that's actually just what it costs without even taking into consideration that this is like a designer with a name. It should have probably even be more expensive. But yeah. So what is the next step when you set a price?
Well, next step is, and this is what we've been talking about, is set an hourly wage. And there's certain things you have to take into consideration when you do this. You have to think about taxes. Because if you say 10 euros an hour, I don't know, in the Netherlands, it's for the lower incomes, approximately 30%. What's left of it, it's 6 euros and something per hour. And if we want to make a living out of that, how many hours do you have to make? So a couple of years ago, I was really curious and I found this website in the Netherlands, ZZP tarief. And it's still out there. I have to check the link so you can...
Yeah, I will definitely share it in the show notes.
Yeah. In there, they talk only about this, setting an hourly wage. I was curious because I was thinking, okay, the minimum you want to make is the minimum wage. But minimum wage is for people who are in jobs. So how does this relate to someone who works self-employed? I did some calculations and some more calculations and put a lot of hours in it and I had a calculator. So, and I found that, and this was in 2013, so it's a couple of years ago, the minimum wage translated to an hourly wage for a self-employed who has to pay taxes, VAT and everything is 35 euros per hour. And then you're living minimum wage. And then, next part, you can, well, what's a normal work week? 40 hours a week? Yeah. So, because minimum wage says you work 40 hours and then you get a certain amount of money. You have a yearly income. But if you sell products and you put the hourly wage for knitting the sweater for 35 euros an hour, you're not knitting 40 hours a week. There's a lot of more work to do. So either you have to put more hours into the sweater, calculate more hours, or 35 euros is too low because it will not provide you the income you need. So there's the difficulty. So I would say somewhere between 35 euros and 50 euros per hour is the minimum that you should ask. Then we come to the third part, and this is, because I said it already, you need a yearly income. And you need to provide for yourself. You need to pay, well, again, those taxes. You need to pay your living space, your food, everything. So you need a certain amount of money to get through the year. And you can also do this on a monthly basis, but I think yearly basis is good because taxes are mostly on a yearly basis. So you can also change the mindset and say, okay, I need and this is low income, 20,000 euros per year, netto. I don't know, netto, is that an English word as well?
I think so, net.
Yeah, so I need 20,000 euros net to make a living, preferably more, of course, but And then you can say, okay, how many sweaters can I knit in a year? How many of those would I sell in a year? Then you can calculate what a sweater would need to cost.
Yeah.
And this is setting totally different prices when you start to compare. I think this is more sustainable for you as a self-employed person. And there's the difficulty because, well, is there a market for that? I don't know.
I believe there's a market for everything, but then there's the next thing. You're not there if you're just a skilled knitter or designer. You have to be a marketeer as well.
Yes.
You have to be able to communicate and to sell your product.
Yes.
Or to get people to do it for you. And then you need to earn more to pay them.
Exactly.
So you basically need to be an all-round entrepreneur as well. And I remember from when I was in art school, there was no information at all. We didn't learn anything. I mean, it's a while back, so I'm hoping things have changed right now.
At some art schools in the Netherlands, it's better, but we still hear the same thing. Yeah. I wish my art school had done something about this.
So I think there definitely needs to be more focus on the business side of being a crafter or an artist or whatever you call yourself in your industry. I really think that I love it that you shared this 3-step, the 3 ways of setting your price, because I think what people never do, like the hobbyist knitter, I'm just totally generalizing here, but there's no other way right now. What they don't think about is the fact that they need to get to this yearly income and then calculate backwards from that.
Yeah.
So you're thinking of small successes in the beginning. Wow, I sold the sweater for the right amount of money.
Yeah.
But will you be able to sustain that throughout the year or multiple years? And when I ask people if they thought there's a market for this type of product, 47% of the followers on Instagram that actually saw it, because that's also a specific group, thought there's no market for it. And that's really sad. But at the same time, as I said, I believe there is, because the world is full of people. There are a lot of people that are willing to pay fair prices, enough people to sustain you as a person, and even more people. They are there. It's just the trick. How do you find them? For me, when I just started with a knitted collection, I thought only rich people will buy this. I have a completely different way of looking at these things right now, because the amount of money that somebody spends on an item doesn't have to reflect their income. It could also reflect their joy, their love, their support, the fact that they are able to save up money. It could reflect that too. So yeah, it's a matter of finding the right people. So I think there is a market, and hopefully we'll talk to artists in other interviews about what they think and what their experience are. So if we talk about all these serious things, I wonder if people think, well, that's not much fun. You have to decide if you want to take it seriously as a professional or just knit for fun. Now, what is your opinion when it comes to, I'm just going to knit, put some things on Etsy, and as long as I get my material back, I'm fine with it because I just love doing it.
Yeah, I do get it. I mean, I'm a hobbyist myself, and at some point I had an idea that I wanted to sell suit baby clothes. And I didn't do any market research or whatsoever. And at some point I found out that the market is really crowded. You have to do a lot of marketing and stuff. And I decided, okay, that's not for me. I chose for my job. Yeah, in a way, I think it's okay to do this, but you have to realize you're doing something to the market, and you're doing something to the market for people who have to make a living from it. And I think this is the difficulty. Well, then I use Etsy again, that there's hobbyists and there's professionals on there. And from the accounts, you cannot tell which is which. This is very difficult for the consumer to see. So I think, and this is what we're struggling with as a union as well, some education to the consumer is necessary. They have to understand how the price is what's the difference in these prices. If it's just a hobbyist who sells some stuff but has a day job, that's okay. And I think these two can be besides each other. I mean, they're probably, reality check, they're probably going to be together forever.
Let me just ask, does the union do anything to educate the consumer? Do they have projects around that?
At this point, no. This is a struggle, well, I think since the beginning of the union. Artists are struggling with this, and so is the union. So it's really difficult. And I think what you see nowadays with clothing is that also some clothing selling companies are telling how the costs are calculated. I think this is something you can do as a professional maker to show your consumers that how your price is made, how it's calculated.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not necessary. I mean, if you target the right market, then maybe it's not necessary to do all this.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the followers on Instagram, Tineke, had a really nice way of going about this. So she's an educated artist, and her teacher said 35 euros is the minimum hourly wage, exactly the price that you were saying. So I love that because now it's true. But she also said that what she does is when somebody orders something from her, on the receipt, she will state the hours that she's worked on it and her hourly rate, and she will give the customer 1 hour free of charge as like a gift.
Yeah.
That does something to the consumer's brain because they see these hours and like, oh my God, that's so much work. Wow, this is what it cost an hour. But hey, she gave me 1 hour. So I thought that was really a really nice way of educating your customer and not selling yourself short, maybe for that hour. But I mean, we have to grow in this, right? So it's a road we need to travel on. And I think with products, a lot of ways to make sure the consumer accepts the price in a way is things like packaging, really good websites, like profile yourself, like put yourself in the market as an artist and take yourself seriously. So invest a little bit in that website and all those kinds of things. In customer service, all those kinds of things make it that people see you as a professional. And there's just a big, big difference. Like Brechtje, we had her in the Conscious Knitting Club. She makes the solid wood sock blockers. Her wrapping and the way she sells that item is so special. She finds cans, like secondhand cans, where she puts her spindles in. It's a can? No, it's not a can. It's a tin. Canned foods. This is the same word in Dutch, but in English it's called a tin. And she goes to secondhand markets and finds these, and then you get it in this. There's like so much soul and love that goes into it. It totally connects to that price. So there's lots of ways you can go about that, but take it seriously. And what I want to come back to is the question where, let me see. Then I asked people, we are not doing ourselves a favor by underpricing our handmade products. And 98% agreed. So there's a lot of different emotions and different ideas around pricing. And I think because we're asking my followers, this group, mostly hobbyists. I mean, I have some professionals following me as well, but people really just don't know. And they tend to want to make an extra buck with something they love doing because they just want to do it more. They want to do more of it. And while they do it, they can make an extra buck. That's great. But as you said, Jonna, it really does something to the price. And I want to share these numbers with you. I looked on Etsy. So we were talking about sweaters a lot of the time. I looked on Etsy for socks, hand knit socks. There were, let me see, 91 items for socks that cost 100 to 200 euros. So in comparison, there were 7,433 for hand knit socks, mind you, hand knit socks under 20 euros. Now, I'm using socks as an example because one of our followers reacted and said, I'm a fast knitter, a pair of socks. I can knit a pair of socks in 6 hours. So that would be 90 euros if we're talking about 15 euros an hour.
Wow.
So 6 hours, we talked about this before. I'm not good at math from my head. So 6 times 35. A pair of hand knit socks should cost 210 euros at a minimum. So here's where you go.
Sorry, VAT not included.
VAT, exactly.
Yes.
VAT not included. Like,
I mean, VAT not included. So in the Netherlands, I think socks is 21%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
21%.
So make that calculation.
Yeah. Do you did that calculation? Like we're both here with our calculators.
So that's 44 euros of VAT.
Yeah. So
that's 254 euros for a pair of socks.
Yeah. Yes. And there's a lot we can learn from this. Like the value of the handmade item and the fact that we can buy handmade items. Let's focus on the handmade items for really low prices, which is so not fair for people that really want to make a living out of it. But as you said, it's a long journey, but just being conscious about this. And if you're selling your items and you're listening, like up them, up, more.
Please.
Yes.
But when I think 20 euros for a pair of socks, I mean, I can buy store-bought socks that are probably, store-bought socks are made with a knitting machine.
Yeah.
I can, okay, maybe woolen socks are 15 euros max. Or maybe some are 20. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm guessing here, but I mean, you're also, in a way of thinking, you're selling yourself short because, a knitting machine, I have no knitting machine, but I'm sure it's done faster.
Yes, absolutely.
Than knitting by hand.
Invented the bleeding machine, right?
Yeah.
Because they needed the price to go down.
So you cannot compare these items.
No.
And on Etsy, knitted items that are made with a knitting machine, socks or otherwise, are sold as handmade.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's okay. I mean, that's a whole different discussion, but
I'll be honest about these things.
But this is something you have to take into consideration when you compare your prices with others.
Yeah.
Is it really handmade?
Yeah.
Or is it really hand knit?
Yeah. Knit by hand. Knit
yes, exactly.
knit with the use of hands. I push the button on the machine with my finger. I think that whole what is handmade versus not handmade, obviously we don't want to support the fast fashion industry. So there's that. The fact that somebody spent their time and their love making these items is also valuable.
Yes.
It might be more valuable, and I'm going to go on a little edgy thing here. It might be more valuable and if it's knit by somebody you know. So shouldn't hand knit socks just be gifts and not be sold?
Yeah, that's a way of thinking. I'm not sure. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and then I think because there we go back to the, are you knitting for production or are you selling an original design that where you show a part of yourself that's really original and basically an art.
Yeah.
So there's so much to talk about here. And
yeah, what's also something to tell the customer, I was thinking about this, is how a woolen sweater will last for probably 100 years, maybe more. So it's really sustainable.
Yeah.
A sweater you buy in the store, this is my total frustration. I love wool. I don't want synthetics. They make me sweat.
Yeah.
So, and this is the second part, I started knitting for myself because I couldn't find any woolen sweaters. 100% wool.
Quality.
I couldn't really find it. But if there's synthetics in there, it's probably not going to keep its shape or be this beautiful for the same amount of time as a woolen sweater.
Yeah, I think it might, depending on the quality of the synthetics, as there's a different.
Okay, that's true. Yeah.
But I think it has more to do with the way we view these items. We view them as throwaway items. So they're not as expensive. Once we get sick of them or they have a little hole, we move on to the next one. Whereas if you have a hand knit sweater, you will probably spend some time mending it to make it last longer. You will take care of it. You will, like in winter, you will wrap it up and have it safe for moths and other things. And I think it's more of, if you go through the whole, and here I go again, I know that I bring this up a lot, but this has totally changed me. If you learn what items in your life are functional and beautiful and spark joy, you will have a different attitude towards them. You will love them longer, and you don't need that kick of the rush, the shopping rush, all of that. You can learn to appreciate a quality made item. And so I would pay for a hand knit item. I would pay a fair price for it if I would totally love it, even if I could make it myself, because I appreciate somebody else came up with that idea. Yeah. And I bought a cape from Stephen West when he did a sale from his samples. A lot of people would think it's a hideous thing because it kind of is in a way. And I'm sure I could make it myself, but only after I've seen it, because it came from his brain and he has such a specific idea on color and texture. I would never have thought of that myself. So I think this is one of the biggest mind shifts.
I think so. I'm still making it for myself. To be honest, I want to be more conscious of the things I buy, but also it's really easy to buy the cheap stuff.
Yeah,
it's so very easy. So it's difficult.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I believe in educating people and giving them information about all these different aspects. We can slowly make a difference and start living differently, start making better choices. I totally encourage people to get a business and do things they love, but it is a profession and you really have to take it seriously and do all the things that are not so fun. So if you really love knitting and you want to share it with other people and you don't want all of the serious shit, consider gift knitting. Yeah, or really dive into it and go for it and make it happen, because I personally really believe there's a market for it, although it is small.
Yeah. There's also one last thing. If you have a different set of products, then you can have some products that are a bit cheaper than they should be to get your customers to come to you. I wouldn't recommend it by starting, because I think this is something you really have to think about and you have to be conscious about it when you do this. But I can imagine that if, for example, you knit socks and you knit sweaters, that either one of the two you make a bit cheaper than they should be, just to get the customers to know you. And this is what stores everywhere do. It's what supermarkets do. That's why meat in the Netherlands is so cheap. I mean, it's ridiculously cheap. And milk, for example. But so this is okay, but you're selling yourself short if you do this for every product you have.
Yeah. So getting a strategy, basically.
Yes.
Yeah. So to round off our conversation, what would you say is a doable step people can take in terms of becoming more professional?
Yeah, it's difficult because I can think of many ways, and I don't think there's one perfect way. But if you really want to do it, I would say first step, and I think this is a scary part, register for taxes. And this is a total business part. But if you're committed to take that step, I think that's the first step to being professional. And then comes the research, because probably in your head you already know what product you want to make. This is to be honest, this is the easy part, because this is what you love and what you want to make. And so along the way, with all these business steps, keep that in mind, because that is what will keep you going. I realize I'm the advising part, and it's easier said than done. This would be my advice, but I can understand that in reality, it works different.
It does. And I don't think crafters go out to find a business advisor. It would not be the first step that they take. It's probably something you do when things get difficult, or you don't get that momentum going. Yeah. And then you're like, okay, so what do? I want to make this business work. And then they go business. And then slowly, this is kind of how it worked for me. You start as a really enthusiastic lover of a craft. And then from there, you take your steps, and the steps that seem logical, until you reach a point where you think, okay, so now I need some help. Could you share with us some resources that we can share with people in the show notes?
Yes, well, I only know, because we operate mainly in the Netherlands, or actually only in the Netherlands. I only know Dutch websites, but I know Chamber of Commerce. Yeah. The Netherlands has very good information about how to start your business, and there's all steps and things you have to think about for yourself. If you're in the Netherlands and you want to start a business by yourself, you probably start an eenmanszaak.
Yeah.
So you don't have to check that out anymore. Just know that's the way to go. And I think you can find a lot of information on the internet at first. If you're willing to do the research, you don't really need a business advisor at the first start. No. It's like you said, when you get stuck.
Yeah.
When you don't know how to move forward. And I think it's really helpful to find people who who are struggling with the same things, other business owners in your profession.
Community people, community. Yes. It's so important to find people that are going through the same thing, enjoying the same things. So I just got an idea. I will definitely open up a group in our community specific for people that want to start a business in craft. And then you can find everybody there. The community is free, so just come on over and find other makers that want to be a professional in the field.
Yeah, well, I remember one now that is knitting related. It's also a Mighty Network. So, do you know the Everyday Knitter?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, they have a separate group for people who have a profession. Some really nice people are in there, I think.
Yeah. So then you have two options.
And I'm sure there's a whole lot of Facebook groups. I don't like Facebook that much.
Absolutely,
but there are a lot out there.
Okay, I think people will have to first really get a cup of something and process this. I can't wait to hear some reactions. Everybody, you can go to the show notes, and we have a button there where you can tape your reaction. I would love to hear them, and I want to share them in the upcoming show. So please share your thoughts with us. Thank you so much, Jonna. It was so awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I liked it. Thank you for having me.
My conversation with Jonna was amazing. There were so many takeaways from this conversation. I am mentioning the top 10 takeaways on the show notes. So if you want to have a quick view of all the important points that we talked about, go over to the show notes at www.ja- Actually, it's not dash. I just learned it's hyphen. Anyway, you know what I mean. So that was an amazing conversation. It with full of eye openers and things we kind of know but really don't want to know, and also a lot of ways that we can actually change things. And as I'm all about change in our industry for the good, we were talking in our conversation, as you heard, about opening a group for business owners and professionals in the industry. And I proceeded to open one in my online community, which you can enter from our website that I just mentioned, and also from the show notes via a direct link. I've called it BBB, Better Business Building. And I'm looking forward to seeing you appear in that group. Now, I have been thinking, we were talking about pricing, and um, I need to do the same thing. So I work about 22 hours a week to provide you all with information through the podcast, the community, the Conscious Knitting Club, and all of these things. But I still decided to keep this a free and open group um, to start off with. And it's probably going to stay free. So, I want to explain this to you. The Conscious Knitting Club is a place where I put in a lot of hours and effort, research, writing, making downloadable files that you can work with. This group, I'd like to start off as an open group where we can all know each other and talk about things that we need and we want, and how asking questions about how we can grow our industry in a good way and our own businesses. I think that that's a good way to start, to just welcome everybody in. And my plan for the future would be to then start a mastermind, a group of people that really want to get to work and want to put in more energy, more effort to make real changes and get this movement going on the professional side of our industry. And so that'll be something for later. We'll just start to invite everybody in. So if you're a professional in the knitting or textile industry, you are so welcome to join us to open up this conversation. I can't wait to meet you there. Don't worry about the thing that a lot of business owners have, that they're a little bit anxious about talking to I would say talking to their competition. So, but think about, we're not focusing on your collections or on specifics. We are talking about general ideas, and um, it's more about, I would I would almost say the politics, but more about the philosophy of how we run our businesses. And you don't have to share everything. You can just be yourself and learn from other people. Obviously, if you share more, you get more. It's like that's how it works. But you can choose what to share. So don't worry about competition. Um, if you feel like things could be better, and if you don't know where to start building a conscious business, and just simple things you can do make a big difference. But we have to get this conversation going. And I'm opening up the doors. So please feel welcome. Join us, and leave me messages on the show notes by clicking the record button if you have any questions. I'd love to answer the questions in one of our next episodes. Thank you. Bye. Smaller Life is more than just a podcast. It's connected to Javol, an indie yarn and tool shop from Rotterdam in the Netherlands, with an online community that's all about bringing back the consciousness in our crafting practice and businesses. The website is www.ja-wol.com. Find our Conscious products, learn more about the free community, and sign up for our Conscious Knitting Club membership and our weekly newsletter. You can follow me on Instagram at Javol Rotterdam. If you're a regular listener, consider making a monthly contribution and becoming a sponsor through our Patreon page. If you're able to make a financial contribution, it would mean a lot. The show is free for you, but it's not free to produce. If you own a business that fits the narrative, I will happily make a mini commercial for you. If you are a maker, small business owner, or otherwise experienced in running a business with a conscience, or know someone that fits the description and want to tell my listeners about your experiences, get in touch with me via the website or send me a DM on Instagram. Knowing more and choosing with a conscience makes the world better. If you have any questions about an episode or want to leave a note to me and the other listeners, click the button in the latest show notes on the website and talk. One of the easiest things you can do to support the podcast is to leave an honest review on Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to the podcast on the platform of your choice so you'll never miss an episode. And share it in your social network or even just mentioning it over coffee with a friend. I'm only one person and I count on you to help me spread the message. Thanks for listening. Bye.